Sure.
All right, I'm here with John Bartholomew again. Thanks for taking the time, John.
Yeah, my pleasure, Eric. Thanks for having me again.
So, to continue where we left off, how do you handle this busy life that you have now? Playing, teaching, Chessable, busy channel. I'm sure people are contacting you all the time. How do you manage all that?
Yeah, I definitely wear a lot of different hats in the chess world these days. I would say over the past few years, though, especially, really ever since I started making YouTube videos, chess has felt a lot less like work to me. Certainly, I'm putting in a ton of hours, and you do have to work very hard if you're self-employed in general.
Yeah.
But it sounds cliche to say this, but I think I'm so passionate about chess and helping people, teaching, that it's feeling less and less like work to me, which to me indicates that I'm doing something on the right track personally, because that's the ultimate goal, right? That your work doesn't actually feel like work.
Yeah, where you're just passionate.
Even though there are days where, yesterday I streamed for 5.5 hours. I was playing Komodo Boss Rivals on Twitch, and we were playing all these different levels of Komodo, and I was paired up with Fidel Corrales, a grandmaster, and it was exhausting. And then I quick got something to eat, and then I made a 30-minute YouTube video and posted it. And by the time everything was done, it was close to midnight.
Yeah.
So you do have days like that, but yeah, I think just being passionate about your work, I'm really fortunate to do something that I'm passionate about and allows me to earn a good living too.
Yeah, a lot of people are curious in chess about burnout and things like that. It seems like, would you say that's not a problem for you?
I think it has been a problem in the past because, especially when I was coaching a lot and I started getting so many inquiries for coaching and I was taking on so many students, that at that point there was a moment where I felt burned out and I had to take a break for a few months from coaching.
Oh, wow.
But then I decided I was going to cut the number of... Sorry?
When was that?
That was, I would say, 2014. Yeah, so about 5 years ago now. I took a few months off and I just sort of evaluated what my priorities were. At that point, I had more than enough inquiries, like way more than I could handle. And I decided, what's my optimal number of teaching hours per week? I just tried to lay it out in advance. And I determined that it was 15 to 20. I think 15 to 20 hours teaching per week, not counting the associated time you spend preparing for the lesson and also sending homework, which definitely adds up. That's easily another 10 hours, I would say.
Yep.
That works for me. And there was a point where, like, at the peak of my teaching, I was hitting about 40 hours per week teaching, which is, as you know, you're an active teacher yourself. Like, that's a lot. I think that's probably too much for anyone to handle.
Yeah, because what you do is, I mean, at least when I'm talking, I'm just kind of constantly going, and I'm going as fast as I can because I want to get as much in. I want to explain as much as I can, and if you're doing that at lightning speed for, 6 hours a day, you're going to be really exhausted, and especially if they're not back to back to back, then it's like, oh wow, I don't know if I can keep doing this. But
totally, I had days where I was teaching for 7 or 8 hours, and by the end of those lessons, you do feel like a machine, and it's just too mechanical. It took a lot of the enjoyment, and I felt like the quality of the lessons was dipping a little bit. Whereas if I teach, 3 or 4 hours a day, it's very engaging for me, and I feel like I'm bringing more quality to the students, and I still have time to make a YouTube video or do a Twitch stream or work on Chessable, all of that stuff. So it's a nice balance now.
Yeah, I think you said that you liked the kind of creative outlet that you had, and that was one of the reasons why you wanted to pursue YouTube and just having just a clear voice and everything like that. And it's nice that you've kind of given yourself the time, and I guess that helps a lot with not being too stressed out, and also maybe being able to feel like you can be more creative this way and kind of do whatever you'd like to do, like the video you did on the power of reciprocal thinking. Just kind of
commented on YouTube. Thank you.
Yeah. It's I was like, I always wonder about these things. Like, I wonder who's gonna be the first to do that or talk about that. And it's the same. I guess I had the same thing about Chessable. I was like, I wonder. I'm wondering about this 8 or 9 years ago. I wonder when that's going to be a thing. And that's like, John's there. So well, thanks for looking out for all of us. So,
my pleasure. And I think that's the thing in chess. Some of the barriers to entry maybe seem insurmountable, but I think there's still a lot of opportunity within chess to, we were talking before we went live here, do different scalable things where you can perhaps try to, like group coaching, for instance. Like I haven't seen someone who's done group coaching in chess on a truly organized level. Unless there's people out there doing it privately, but I think there's an opportunity there, and I think it could be done with the right infrastructure. But maybe because chess is such a niche thing, and you need a lot of initial capital and time to get a website like that up and running. But I think it's possible.
Oh, you meant online, or
online specifically.
Right. Yeah, because I know Michael Muljar. I interviewed him when he was here in Budapest, and yeah, he's like a machine. He's really going all day, and he's doing tons of classes. But yeah, no,
teaching schools primarily.
Yeah, like 15, 20 schools. Yeah, very busy, very busy.
Right.
So, anyway, relating back to your work and videos, do you have a specific type of target audience? Would you say?
Yeah, I'd say most of the people who watch my videos are enthusiastic amateur players looking to improve. I get the sense that I have a lot of 20s and 30s, people in their 20s and 30s who, a typical storyline when I get an email from someone is they played chess when they were younger, they enjoyed the game, and then life kind of took over.
Yeah.
They went to college, they got a job, and now they're getting back into chess a little bit later in life, and they see all these online resources out there, and YouTube is one of the top ones, and it really rekindles their interest. So I think I have a lot of people watching my videos like that. Certainly the younger demographic too. But yeah, people in their 20s and 30s looking to improve, enthusiastic amateurs.
Yeah, I've definitely seen some people who said, oh, when I was a kid, I got a rating and I was 1650 or 1700. And, they're coming back 10, 15 years later and they're 1300. And they're like, I want to go back to that. I want to, make a push for 2000 or 2200, or even just like, let's say, an online rating of 2000, and they'll be really competitive about it. And so, yeah, that's always, it's always fun to see someone who's really passionate about pursuing a certain goal like that. So yeah, I and it definitely seems like you're one of the first people that someone will come to. I mean, I had someone contact me about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and they said, oh, I've been watching John Bartholomew's videos, and one thing I really like is when he looks at a position and he's talking about candidate moves, he considers 2 moves basically immediately. And so he always has multiple options, and he's doesn't get on a one-track mind sort of thing when he's looking through positions, and he's looking through various possibilities. And it helped this player in particular, who was also kind of a late 20s, early 30s type player, basically just have a certain kind of realistic mindset and kind of got an idea of how you think through things. And one thing that I try to help people with, and it is just the fact that IMs and GMs and players I know aren't calculating like crazy. They're not calculating like 20 move lines, Yeah. I mean, especially when you look at a guy like Magnus playing Blitz, you go, wow, if this guy can play Blitz so well with, thinking in 2 or 3 seconds for his moves, then he must on a certain level be relying on really good understanding and lots of experience and lots of very good intuition. So
I think Kasparov dispelled that notion in an interview, because that's obviously one of the famous questions that journalists love to ask chess players, like how many moves can you see ahead?
Yeah.
I think Kasparov said something along the same lines, which was cool to see a calculating machine like him say that. He's like, well, in any given position, usually I'm only thinking 2 to 4 moves ahead, and I'm just trying to make judgments of those resulting positions. That's all that's necessary.
Yeah, exactly. I actually quoted a Boris Gelfand quote from Gelfand's Best Games, and it was in my book, Applying Logic in Chess, and he basically talked about how there are certain positions where you really don't even want to try to go too deep simply because you can't. And you're just trying to make sure you catch all the immediate possibilities, at least consider them in the next 2 or 3 moves. And he actually cited a game that he played against Kasparov. The comment there was from his game with Kasparov, and it was just so messy, where he just said, all right, if I have an idea of what Kasparov's doing here, that's good enough. Then at least, as long as I'm kind of not being blindsided here, that's a good start there. So Is there, would you say that there's a particular type of struggling player or student that you think you could help the most, or viewer, let's say?
That's a good question, because obviously the issues that one can have in chess are endless.
Yes, they are.
I would say the person who is going to invest a lot of time outside of the lesson is always a great candidate for being a student. Mm-hmm. And even for a good candidate for being a viewer, an enthusiastic chess viewer of YouTube content, because, watching chess videos on YouTube should not be a major component of your serious chess study, let's say. I think it is good for, as you were talking about, maybe demonstrating how a strong player thinks and approaches the game, even from a psychological level. And certainly I try to gear more my videos towards instructional topics like that, the power of reciprocal thinking. But any strong chess player is going to tell you that you need, first and foremost, a lot of introspection and a lot of just solitary practice in chess. So I think the student who's going to spend a lot of time working on their own games, so playing longer games online, if they play online exclusively, committing to that, analyzing their games afterwards, of course, utilizing, I say the word utilizing, it's funny. I was just on Twitch the other day and I was saying utilizing is a word that I try not to use because it means the same as using.
Yeah. So I'm going to stop utilizing, but I'm utilizing it right now. So
yes, I'm utilizing it right now. Just let it slip. But yeah, using all your different resources. So it might even be books and setting up positions on a physical board and trying to visualize the solutions. That's going to be a great candidate for someone I can help.
Oh, great. Yeah, no. So basically, yeah, really someone with a really serious attitude who's really, I mean, I definitely see it when people are really passionate about learning and hungry for knowledge, looking up games and looking up all their losses and, oh, what did this guy play here? And I always find it very cute when a young student goes, oh, I looked up a Karpov game in this variation and I looked up Kasparov game in this variation. And you go, yeah, well, I mean, I think that's something Greg Shahade has talked about as well. When he sees these young players who have a lot of knowledge of some of these old games or games of top players, he often goes, yeah, that guy, he's on the right track. Yeah, he's going to make it.
You always look for the self-starters. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
I was one of those kids. That's what I would do. I mean, my family would be taking a road trip and I would just bring 3 or 4 chess books and just read them voraciously in the car. I was always looking for that little edge and trying to absorb as much knowledge as possible about the game.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that. You were one of the only really young players I knew in the U.S. at the time who was really, I would say, studying openings from books and had some fresh ideas. And so I would play a lot of players who would be, maybe of a similar rating, and they would just kind of play some sort of offbeat stuff, and then you were playing some really good mainline stuff. And completely catching me off guard and everything when we play some blitz games. And I have very fond memories of that. But referring to kind of your professional chess career, is there anything you played that's a really memorable game, like a great attacking game or positional game that comes to mind?
There's a game I played against Alexander Shabalov. I believe it was the 2003 Foxwoods Open that I think is the single most memorable game I've ever played, because he was the U.S. champion, fresh off winning the U.S. championship at the time. I was, I think, 16 years old, and it was the first round of the Foxwoods Open, and I played a fantastic game from the white side of an Open Sicilian. It was a Klavnikov variation. And I just remember the feeling I had when playing this game. Everything just seemed to flow perfectly from start to finish. You ever have one of those games where it just all comes together, and I did not feel intimidated. I didn't feel like I wasn't on even terms with him, even though obviously he was much stronger than me at that time. And after having played that game, it just gave me so much confidence going forward that I could make as many strides as I want in chess. So that game always stands out to me as being one where I hit this chess nirvana. I was in this flow state as I played it. Looking back on the game, it was still a pretty well played game.
Yeah, I've only had a few games like that, but I had a game once against this grandmaster named Womaka, and it was one of those things where I kind of went into the game and I kind of, it's sometimes when you're preparing for a game, you go, oh well, I want to try to catch the opponent in their weakest the weakest point of their preparation. And I said, all right, well, let's try an English attack, and let's see how this guy tries to defend it. And I just thought, I'm going to go all out in this game and just, put in everything I have. And I went all out for the attack, and it worked. And, those games give you a very special feeling. Yeah, and they really motivate you to want to just keep going and keep... I mean, it's one of those things in chess where you can create in an incredible way that is very hard to do in so many other things in life. And that's one of the things that makes chess so amazing to me. Is
For
how
sure.
You have these games, and you think back to it. Here we are 16 years later, looking at thinking about the game, and that's pretty amazing. I'm going to look up the game because I don't know it offhand.
Oh yeah, I'll link it to you for sure.
Yeah.
There was a tournament I played too where I had a similar feeling throughout that event. It was the National High School Championship, which I won in 2002. I was a freshman in high school, and I think I was about the 10th seed going into the tournament. I was rated a little over 2,100 USCF, which is hilarious nowadays because that would not put me anywhere close to the 10th seed if I were playing a national high school tournament today with that rating. But I won the tournament with a 7-0 score, and in the final round I beat Yelena Gorlin, who was a top girls player at that time. And again, that game was another game where it just flowed pretty well from start to finish, and I almost felt like I was like destined to win that tournament. Everything just clicked in that one event, and my father was there, got to witness me winning this tournament, and that's probably my best overall tournament memory in my chess career.
Wow. And would you say that, well, what do you think it is that helps you have that flow state? Do you think that you have a certain sense of calmness when you're playing? You're just not nervous at all and just kind of concentrating really well? What would you say?
Yeah, I think definitely controlling your nerves and just having this optimism that things are going to work out in your favor, and that you're not going to get in massive time pressure. You're not going to be confused tactically by the position. At least for me, the times that I feel most in control in a game are when I'm taking some small advantage and grinding my opponent down, or like in the Shabalov game, there was a point where I realized I was strategically winning, and I knew he was just going to throw himself at me.
Right.
But because I knew that, I was prepared, and I was able to parry his attacks and come away with the full point. So generally feeling like in control of the way that it was going to shape up. And the times that I've, on the other hand, the times that I've definitely felt most out of place in chess are when it's a very messy game. And, so if those of you out there who want to try to beat me on stream or something, definitely try to get me into something complicated, especially if time is at all a factor.
So you're definitely a type of player who likes to play for two results or without too much risk when you're
for sure.
able to squeeze.
A lot of chess players are like that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think especially because when you have, at least the way it was for me, it's like at 2200, I was able to play like G2, G4 almost every game and just attack like crazy every game. And then when I started playing a bunch of GMs, that just wasn't really working. They were refuting most of my attacks. And then it was kind of like, all right, well, let me get used to just having a tiny advantage and just pressing that just a little bit. I guess we're kind of in the same boat there, where it's a nice feeling, but it's also something where you feel like you have way more control over the end result that way as well, too.
Yeah, this style works great against lower-rated players in my experience. And, when I play a simul, for instance, often one of the things people think in a simul is, let's play really solid against the simul giver. Try not to see too much of an advantage, keep it close, create pieces. But I always tell people that's a sure way to lose against someone getting the simul. What you should do is, if anything, you should probably try to play a little bit more aggressive than normal and confuse the issue a bit, because that person has,
a few seconds, right?
People, let's say, to play, and
they're
not going to be able to pause for that long at your board and work out the complications. But if you try to just defend a slightly worse endgame where you really have no counterplay, in my opinion, the stronger player is almost always going to win in that scenario.
Oh yeah, and also I think when sometimes, especially when you're playing a lower rated player, if they get into the mindset of I'm going to try to play solidly, a lot of the time what that means is that they'll think, oh, well, I have a pawn break here I can play. I can try to bash out a c5 move to get counterplay. And they'll go, no, I'm going to go c6. I'm not going to push the pawn 2 squares up. I'm a little afraid. And a lot of the time in those cases, they just had to play that c5 or whatever move, like a temporary pawn sacrifice where you're getting the pawn back. And they'll go, no, I just want to be solid. But Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a place for solidity, but there's also a place for getting that necessary counterplay. And if you don't,
I think that's what's actually hindered me a bit when playing Grandmasters is because I do think you have to open up your game a little bit, and I can't expect to beat GMs in this kind of slow, controlled fashion, even though I was describing that in the Shabalov game. But I think on the whole, you have to be bringing a lot of different angles to the table, and especially striving for active play against strong players because they're just too good in the technical aspects of the game.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any tips for how you handle time pressure? I mean, like, for example, let's say you're playing a tense game against a GM. You know, you have this norm situation. It's like round 6 or something, hypothetically. Do you have any tips for handling that type of thing?
Yeah, it's hilarious. I'm definitely a bad guy to ask this in practice because I struggle with time management. I've always struggled with time management. It's like a running joke on my channel. But I would say I recently did this series. I've been posting several videos in this series. I think you even commented on one. You talked about the windshield wiper mate.
Yeah.
I never heard that term before, which was pretty awesome visual.
I just try to make it funny in a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
And visual. And
this series is called Using the Clock as a Weapon.
Right.
And I go into the game specifically with the goal of staying even or ahead on the clock. Not so much worrying about the quality of the moves, but just completely working on time management. And I think selective training like that is pretty important if you want to get a handle on time management issues. And I'm going to do more of that. Also, I would say one strategy which Lev Millman, International Master Lev Millman, once told me is start trying to move quicker when you have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Like, don't wait until you have,
2 minutes,
a minute or 2 minutes or less.
Yeah.
Like, you got to act like you have a lot less time than you do at around the 5 to 10 minute mark in the game.
I agree. Yep, that's very good advice. Does Lev still play, or?
To my knowledge, he's not too active right now. I think he lives in Las Vegas and he's playing a lot of poker at the moment, which is probably a common storyline for a lot of chess players moving to poker. But there's certain players whose time management I really admire, like Alex Lenderman is a great example. I think
very practical player.
Very practical.
Practical, puts pressure on you. Yeah, he does everything right in that sense.
Yeah. And I definitely think there's something to the old Fischer maxim that says that you should never use more than 10 minutes on a move. I bet if I were to look at the decisions in OTB games where I've spent more than 10 minutes, on the whole, they probably haven't produced a better decision than spending less than 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think I can only point to 1 or 2 cases where I found a move that I only found after 10 or 12 minutes or something. Most of the time, a lot of the time, we're just debating in our head. We go, should I play G4? Should I play G4? And you're just convincing yourself to play the move. You already know you're going to play it, and so just go ahead and play it. If you only have one move in mind, just save yourself the time. Save yourself the agony of fighting with yourself over that, and just play the move. So
long analysis, wrong analysis, right? Like that's
well, especially if you're trying to. I mean, that was a big thing for me. Just kind of admitting to myself, all right, if this is a super long line, very messy, I kind of have to admit to myself, all right, I'm not going to calculate this out perfectly. So let's try to be practical here, and how can I make a practical decision here? And I think that's a big thing for a lot of players too, just to acknowledge that and just go, all right, we can make practical choices. Just like you said with the time management thing, that was kind of like a Dvoretsky piece of advice that he had is like, you can go through a couple tournaments where you go where the main focus is, like you said, trying to be even or ahead on the clock against your opponent and see how it goes. If you do it for 1 or 2 tournaments, you're not going to sacrifice too many points. Maybe you might, in the worst case scenario, maybe you might lose 10, 15 points or something. So, it's
and one other related point, I think the people who have very good time management, one thing I notice is that they play methodically and not with a sense of urgency, but they fire off the moves in the opening and the early middle game too. Whereas people who have chronic time management issues, I think they kind of lull themselves to sleep because they say, this is a game in 90 plus 30 time control. Let's say, you might even get another 30 moves that move, or another 30 minutes that move 40. They say, I've got all this time. Like I can afford to think for, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes on a move in the middle game. And the players with the great time management, they never do that. Yeah. They're still playing like with this slight sense of urgency, even in the opening, and they're trying to constantly have you be on the clock.
Oh, I agree. I think that's a very good example was the Lenderman example you mentioned. I mean, I think a lot of people would tank around move 8, 9, 10, and usually around moves 12 to 15, he's very comfortable with that, putting his opponents under pressure, and that gives you a lot of points. Yeah. I mean, it can, for some people, it can give them an extra 50, 100 elo. You never know. Right. It's just really, really keeping the opponent under pressure. I wanted to ask you something a little bit maybe unusual. What would you say, with all the contact requests you get or coaching things, what was maybe the strangest request you've had, if you could say something?
Strangest request?
I've gotten like some psychotherapy type requests, like, can you just help me get into the mindset of like how I can feel better about chess?
Yeah. That you get some inquiries like that. How to handle losses, for instance, is definitely a big one. I think there's a lot of people out there who are afraid to pull the trigger on playing chess.
Yeah, that's true.
Study it, and they don't want to risk playing it for psychological reasons. I'm trying to think of any crazy, like, a sultan's asked to fly me out to the UAE or something, give him lessons for a week. I haven't had anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of lame, but nothing really out of the ordinary comes to mind. I have to think about that.
I asked some GMs. I said, can you teach me, like a lot of GMs believe that the white side of the Berlin is just more pleasant for white. Maybe if you couldn't prove that the Berlin endgame is better for white, but just that it's more pleasant for white. So I asked some GMs, I said, can you teach me the white side of the Berlin and show me why it's more pleasant for white? Just show me that. And all of them said no. I asked 5 different GMs between like 25-10 and maybe 26-30. And I was expecting someone to just go like, yeah, let's do it tomorrow. But everyone's like, no.
Yeah, I'll just fire up ChessBase, pull up my file.
Yeah, it's all right here. Okay, plus equal, we're all good. But they didn't say that. So I think that was like kind of like pushing the limits of like, okay, this is maybe world championship level preparation to get a small plus equal in the Berlin in that type of situation. And on that same note, is there anything like, what would happen if you were asked to coach a top player like Carlsen or a Caruana or second them? Would you take it or would you say no?
Honestly, I would probably say no, because that's a tremendous amount of pressure, first of all. And I think to work for one particular player and basically have the goal of getting them as good as possible and ensuring that they can achieve the best possible positions out of the opening and into the middle game, I think that takes a very selective type of person, a diligent, sort of academic chess mind. I prefer to do a lot of different things in the game. And I like, at the end of the day, I like playing chess and actually experiencing chess firsthand myself. So that's why most of my YouTube content is kind of the let's play variety, even though I do have some purely instructional content. A lot of it is just me like, okay, let's fire up a session and see what happens today. I really enjoy that aspect of chess. I mean, I think most chess players at heart are players themselves.
Oh, yeah.
But I think for that sort of being a second for especially a top level player, that requires a very particular type of chess persona.
Oh yeah, definitely. When I was helping a couple players like Vallejo, I couldn't take too many students at that time. I had to really, really focus. So last question I want to ask you. Any tips on avoiding blunders?
Avoiding blunders. Well, you could do the old blunder check, although it has to be reasonable.
Yeah. You can't overthink it, yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's maybe a topic for a larger discussion. Yeah. But for those of you out there who think there's a formula for coming up with the best chess move in any given position, there definitely isn't. And you should have a checklist of things that you're going to run through before you play each move. You're going to 100% lose on time, and you're also probably going to get confused. Avoiding blunders, though, I would say just try to develop an awareness for undefended pieces and build up your sense of danger. I mentioned this book, Tune Your Chess Tactics Antenna.
Yeah.
I think is great for developing an awareness for this sort of thing, because in the moment, like, everyone is capable of blundering, but if you get good at recognizing the scenarios where blunders are more likely to happen, situations where you have 3 or 4 pieces hanging in an open, volatile position.
Yeah, weak king.
You can get good at recognizing that. You can cut down the situations.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks a lot for your time, and I'll hope to talk to you maybe again next month. Maybe we'll have a part 3. Maybe
part 3. I'd love to do it.
All right. Thanks a lot, John.